Are we streaming?
Yes. You
How
asked
about
for
that?
it?
You got extra situated.
Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you for showing up, for braving the cold, and coming back to provide us with feedback. We have heard a lot of comments and concerns, and what we really wanted to do was create the space to facilitate conversation, to get your feedback. So that's what this meeting is about. We're working with a fabulous consultant firm that heard about the project and was really excited. And the first thing they said was, we have to get, feet on the ground and talk to the people that live here to really get that insight. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, and then I'm going to step to the back because the important part of this entire event is your feedback. So,
All right. Well, thank you all very much. My name is Victor Dover. I'm a town planner and urban designer, which in the public part of my job means question asker, troublemaker, who asks the awkward question. And for those of you who are on the short tour around the courthouse that we had this afternoon, you're probably watching me and seeing me grinning and asking questions and thinking, that guy must think he has the best job in the whole world. But I actually do have the best job in the whole world. My buddies, Robin Crowder, Andrew Georgiadis, and I get to travel around the country helping communities figure out what they want to be when they grow up, all sorts of different aspects to that. As town planners, that's what we work on. And it really is, it's gratifying. But the most important piece of this is that since we're always from somewhere else, we have to get up to speed really quickly. And you all are our secret weapon for getting up to speed quickly. You think of tonight, the things you raise is giving us, as the city's helpers, a high-speed briefing on what's important. Y'all are telling us that. And we have to get up to speed quickly. And we always depend on lots of folks knowing what was behind the work that we left behind, why we did what we did, why we wrote what we wrote, or drew what we drew, so that when we're not there, you can remember that and defend it or stick up for it, change it if you don't like it, but you're in on it. And that's, so the most important thing is to get people together as y'all came tonight. So hopefully this will start a conversation and a lot better. I'll let Robin do most of the background for the specifics of the project, because as the project director from our firm, Robin, who's trained as an architect, we've been working together for years. She's been sitting right beside me for several years, working on a book, which is coming out soon. So this was a chance for Robin to take the lead on this project, and so I think it's lucky for me and Andrew that Robin's taking care of it. Andrew and I have worked together since 2002, something like that? 2001, okay. And I'll just tell you a little secret about him. Andrew's a hot pencil, which means in our world means he can draw really fast. So if you have an idea that we should be making a sketch of, he can draw it. And we can draw it too, but not as fast. And he can draw it better than I can. So grateful to have Andrew here. So the purpose of this first part of tonight is just to do a really quick introduction to who we are and what we do, so you know why we're here and what's on our minds, things we think about as we work on projects of this type. And then Robin has some information we've already dug up about the courthouse and its environs, and some questions to prompt you all with. And then we're going to take notes as we go and hear back from you what's important, what's your vision for how this place, the courthouse and its environs, should be used in the future, what's important to save or not save. And for the purposes of our discussion tonight, everything is on the table. No decisions have been made. I think, Councilwoman, you'll back me up on this. The council has said we should come in and facilitate a new conversation. So there's no secret plan. Nothing's already been decided. That it's up to us, and by us I mean all of us, to figure out what that plan should be and give the best advice we can come up with to your leadership. So that's where we are now. Okay, can you see the screen behind me? Okay, our firm is called Dover Partners. I'm the Dover guy, and you can look us up. We're we're kind of blessed in that we get to work a lot of different places and work at many different scales. So sometimes we're working on a neighborhood design or a revitalization plan for a historic district. Sometimes we're working on a street design or a corridor or a regional plan. A lot of what we do involves communication and education and fixing zoning codes, things like that. So we move around all kinds of different aspects of the technical work, sometimes stepping on a little bit of what usually is what the engineers do, a little bit of what the architects do, a little bit of what the landscape architects and planners do as we do that work. There are three kind of themes that come out in all of the work as we look back on it. Been doing this since 1987. The first is we recommend designing in the sunshine, design in public. Make our clients can possibly stand, which is up front. The second is it's a very visual business. You can't really talk about physical places, towns, neighborhoods, streets, public buildings by just using words and numbers. We have to draw. So we make pictures, and often that means drawing a sketch really fast and holding it up and saying, is this what you meant, Jason? Is this what you meant? And then third, it's been said before that successful people should always start with the end in mind. Although we don't know the answer here, we know the answer should involve concrete results, not just doing planning for the sake of doing it so we can check a box and say we did some planning, but actually focus on implementing whatever is come up with here. There are three big or four big ideas about this that are worth highlighting. Why bother to do all this? Because planning is expensive, takes a lot of time. People give up by volunteer their evenings, and some of it is tedious. It takes a long time. So we wonder, why go through all that? And the answer is, first, you don't get a great town or city or neighborhood from Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny or just by waiting and hoping it happens. You actually get it from doing what I called earlier, drawing lines on a map, deciding the main street belongs here, this is how it should be, this residential street. There's no real way. There's a famous definition of sustainable development. That's a trigger word these days, so the word sustainable means a lot of different things to different people. But I'll tell you, the most beautiful definition I ever heard of sustainable development came from the World Health Organization. They said sustainable development is development that accommodates the needs of the present generation without foreclosing the ability of future generations to meet their needs. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, that you set it up so that with each generation there could be progress, and you haven't, in our time, made some forever decisions that make it harder or even impossible for people in the future to have the world they deserve. It does come down to numbers. Communities thrive on the prosperity of the households and businesses and institutions within them. So in the end, it has to be the kind of place that gets more valuable with time and allows for those revenues that come to the city from property taxes and sales taxes and things like that to grow as expenses grow. That's like how you make the wheels turn. Councilmember, you probably agree with this. If you need to put a new roof on City Hall, or if you're a school board superintendent and you need to put new wheels on a school bus, you need some places where property values are rising with each decade so that the income you need to support all the different things government does, like run a great parks program or put a roof on City Hall, is there when you need it. And so that's kind of the public side of it. Register ring, that's good. But if your street is unwelcoming to those same pedestrians, or people go once and they don't get inspired by it and they don't want to come back, then they're not going to make your cash register ring. So that's the business side of it. So the way we begin always on projects like this is going into the place with our eyes open and our cameras on and looking and measuring, asking questions about why this is the way it is. That's just the way we work. We don't just look at maps or work from far away with Google to find out what's going on. We go to the place. And then we try whenever we can to set up in the town where we're working. Tomorrow we'll have all day, a little bit of Friday, to do that right here in this room. With apologies to your leadership for rearranging all the furniture without asking permission. We did that on purpose. But we'll just be working in this room over the next couple of days in order for that purpose. That leads to a rule. I don't have a lot of rules, but here's one. Everybody gets something they want. Nobody gets everything they want. So you have to come into the conversation about what the future should be with an open mind and thinking about how to create overlaps between your agree on something. That's another way of saying at least some of it. That way we know what to go implement with everyone's support. I'll give you an example. In Bluffton, South Carolina, as Lee Walton knows, we've done a lot of work in the low country of South Carolina where we first met him. In Bluffton, we were able to make a plan for the revitalization of the old town, which is a square mile, small fishing village. And it's been amazing to watch that get implements that belong with the old ones. And they properties that were being in the past. They filled in some of the lost space. They created new public spaces. They fixed their streets. And all of it came from the confidence they got from working together in the way that I'm urging you all to do offers of the different pictures. Like here's after we right before and after. Trying to consolidate all the many ideas and hold it up and again say, is this what you meant? We've done that a bit here in the Atlanta area. I don't know if y'all are, how familiar y'all are with the Pittsburgh neighborhood. Now along the Atlanta Beltline. The Annie Casey Foundation asked us to work on Pittsburgh, and they've been implementing away. And this is one of those little watching that. The differences are subtle, but also preserving what's there. That came out of collaboration of the neighbors in Pittsburgh. And so, you know, typical of our work is to not just draw zoning maps with blobs of yellow for residential and blobs of red for commercial, but to draw maps of the physical place, like where the tree-lined street should be or what the squares should be like. And I'll just give you an example why that's important. This is a little neighborhood extension to we did for the old part of Davidson, North Carolina, college town. Y'all heard of Davidson before? Davidson College is there. And so we designed this neighborhood. We put, you know, trees along the sidewalk and went back a few years after it had gotten started, and I met the lady that you see in the background of this picture. Actually, I broke the rules. I took a picture of her before I asked permission. You're supposed to ask first. So I went running up to her and I said, do you mind if I take your picture? Thank goodness she said yes. But then I asked her, well, without telling her that we had designed the neighborhood, I said, tell me about this place. Well, what do you think about it? What do you like about living here? And she pointed to the trees. I'm a little obsessed with street trees, just so you know. She pointed to the trees. She said, those trees are my lifeline. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, every day, she's an elderly lady. Every day I come out of my house and I walk, you know, the streets around my block, and I walk down the sidewalk. And I only do that because those street trees are there and they throw shade on the sidewalk in the hot summer days in Mecklenburg County. You need shade. And she knows the neighbors' kids and knows their names, and she knows what time they get home from school, and they know when she takes their walk, and she helps them with their homework on the front stoop. She went on and on. But in the end, she said, it's because those trees are there. If those trees weren't there, I would never come out of my house. I would just stay inside and watch television. So I learned a lot from that little conversation. Another one of, and I'll stop with the story about us, but this is the last bit of introduction. Y'all know the neighborhood Glenwood Park in Atlanta, but it's just west of East Atlanta Village. That's a neighborhood we designed. It used to be an old industrial site. It was a concrete recycling plant, and years ago, he drew lines on a map and did the design for Glenwood Park. So we've been coming in and out of the Atlanta area for our whole careers, and it was all just a warm-up act for coming to Fairburn.
That's great. Well, thank you for even so. Um, and so, as outsiders, is that Fairburn does have this rich history, right? And so, like your model says, situated to success, I think it's very telling because our study area, which we will particularly be studying this particular parcel, what we have the advantage of is that there's so much proximity to everything. And so on these kind of corners here, you'll see maps, and this exact map is right over there. There you can see the 5-minute walking radius. And so I know when we were on our way here, a lot of people were saying, well, are you gonna walk, are you gonna drive? Because everything is in such close proximity to everything. So you have the train depot, you have the downtown Fairburn, historic downtown Fairburn, and a school here, farms. So it's in close proximity to so many things, and I think that's important to think about when we're going into what's this vision, not just the particular parcel itself, but how it relates to everything that it surrounds, which is pretty unique. And so we had the great chance to go over there today, and we have been studying this since we've learned about the project. And so I think that through the analysis, we've found that, and what we've heard today, is that this courthouse has been through so many iterations. And so looking at the Sanborn map starting from 1921.
Those are old fire insurance maps, by the way.
Yes. I'll try to see that well, but you can see, if you can. Well, you can see the courthouse in 1921. You can see that the parcels were once adjoined. And it's just one of the many iterations of kind of this plan. And so I think Victor's gonna go ahead and circle that there, but no, it's okay. Yeah, so I think, and then you'll see as it changes over time in 1929, that parcel is kind of split, right? And so now we have this narrow rectangular parcel space. And what we found interesting from this is that once you go to the 1946 Sanborn map, it changes from county courthouse to clinic, library. And so it got, this has been iterations, and yeah. And so there's one of the things we heard here through hearing the history from you all, which is why it's so important for us to come here and listen to you all. I think we were also able to look at the structural report, and so in that we were able to see the changes structurally, the roof changes, the program changes, and we were able to graciously see these amazing plans and elevations that show that further change over time. And so just to highlight why we're all here, the tragedy that happened 2 years ago with the fire, even though it is a tragic, I think there's great opportunity. We were able to go into, and you all were able to see, so thank you, Dana, for that, see the inside of this courthouse. And I think what expecting I think the foundation is very strong, and with that, you can do a lot. And so even after the fire, the courthouse was recognized by the Georgia Trust, and even with the description and showing its old photos, it kind of emphasizes the support that the community has in their description. And so this is known that if you have a community that backs the support of renovating and restoration, that things can go far. And so this courthouse is also on the National Register, which is also pretty big, and I think we'll see examples coming up that I wanted to share that have similar ideologies, right? National Register, in the Georgia Trust, and just to get you guys an idea of what happens to these other places that have similar names and backgrounds, what can happen as far as renovation. And so,
Can I interrupt for just a little bit? One thing to know about the National Register, first, it's a great honor to have a building that's recognized as being so special that it belongs on the National Register of Historic Places, but that recognition is just that. It doesn't provide any kind of official protection or prevent demolition, for example. It's just, it just means that it's a important structure and you shouldn't approach that lightly. But being on the National Register doesn't afford any protection to a building. And so one of the very real possibilities, among several possibilities, is demolition. If there's no way to support financially support the restoration of the building and adapting it to a new use, then demolition will become the financially attractive alternative. So that's one option. And then restoring it to some purpose is another option. And there are many variations along that. So we don't know what the final answer will be, just in case you were wondering. But it's tempting to think, oh, we're on the National Register. That must mean nobody would ever be able to touch it, right? That's not actually true. The decisions about such things are local, not national.
Thank you. And so just going into the first example, Hancock County Courthouse, I don't know if anyone is familiar, but this courthouse is in Sparta, Georgia. Yeah, built in 1883, and also kind of has a similar story. And so beautiful tower, historic, on the National Register, but tragically went through a fire in 2014. And so when I saw this and compared it to the fire, both tragedies, but it's like it had the possibility to being way worse. And this was obviously so much larger and had greater impact. But with support from the community and with the county commission, and support from also the Georgia Trust, they were able to start rebuilding and rebuild in 2016. And so this is just an example of kind of a similar story with that optimism. Even though this program stayed as a courthouse, that the stories can align very well. And so this is another example that I found also on the National Register, the Beacon, which is in Topeka, Kansas. It used to be a women's club in the 1920s. And so thinking about all these programs that we heard earlier, art rooms, dance classes, dance clubs, this is an example of showing something completely different being renovated and turned into sort of this event space. Just kind of another building on the National Register being able to be renovated and turned into something that may just meet the needs of the people there in Beacon.
Each of these communities went through the same what-if kind of process we're talking here. What if we keep it? What if we don't keep it? What if we kept it? What would it turn into?
Sure.
They had to do all that, just what we're doing now. They had to do that in each of the examples that she's showing.
And here's another example in Homer, Georgia. I like this example because it kind of has the similar form as our courthouse, that vertical kind of form to it. And instead of this is also a building on the National Register as well, but instead of taking this building and changing it or tearing it down or doing something else with it, they actually rebuilt their more modern courthouse and more efficient courthouse on the site adjacent. And instead now this courthouse houses the Chamber of Commerce. And so it's a way to kind of celebrate the architecture that still exists, which we have the opportunity to do here, but also kind of changing the program and giving it a new name. And so these two examples me and Victor looked at this morning, one of them being the fire station number 11 in Atlanta on the left, and the Columbia Firehouse in Alexandria. And so these are just two civic buildings, right, kind of similar to the courthouse civic building that has this history. And once the fire stations moved, they kind of turned into a completely different program, both turning into restaurants. So this just shows that these civic spaces can be changed. They don't have to be courthouses. And we know from today's walk that they don't have to be courthouses. They can be whatever we'd like. And so this is just an examples to get you guys thinking about what should be here, what could be here, what do we need? And so like I said earlier, we have a good opportunity here with so much proximity to the historic nature of the town. And so I think next we just want to hear from you all. I think we're done talking. And so we'll hear from you all about how these examples kind of impact your idea and your vision of the city or the courthouse itself, and how that overall kind of ties into the historic town center and all the proximity it has to, or around Fairburn. And so I'll open it up to questions or comments, because
The city is graciously offered to stream this meeting live for people who might be watching online or watch a recording. So we're going to use a microphone. Just it will formalize things a little bit. But Chamberlain's got one. I've got one. Want to do a lightning round? What's your vision for this place? What's important to you about it?
I have a
oh,
question.
you're fine, you're fine.
I have a question. I would like to start with a question. Can you speak to the Georgia Trust and what kind of designation they've given to this building?
Yeah, so after the fire in 2022, the Georgia Trust kind of placed it on their website as this place that is unsafe. And so that is why today we weren't able to go in, but the places of peril are just places that are not really safe to kind of go in and to kind of use as spaces right now, but still acknowledging the potential, like I said in the description, that they had that the residents here, which are you all, have want to renovate, want to stabilize this place. And so that's kind of that specific place of where this courthouse is mentioned.
So it's the Georgia Trust for Historic Preservation? Is
Yes.
that the Georgia Trust? And the places in peril is like important historical buildings that are in danger of not being taken care of?
Could be lost.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
It's the National Trust and the state trusts typically publish annual lists
Right.
of the most endangered places, and this is on Georgia's list.
Gotcha.
But it's not uncommon for that to be the first step in deciding to get together and do something about it. And while nonprofit institutions like the Georgia Trust don't have an infinite amount of money to pass out to improve projects, they can be very much part of finding
Right.
funds,
Yeah,
whether they're public funds or philanthropy.
gotcha.
And, so as a tool for our discussion, and Andrew can take notes as we do it, I made 4 columns here for like possible scenarios, all the different things we've heard about in researching this and heard about during the course today. One is a possibility, which is to restore the building and its grounds for public purposes. And you can just use your imagination for a minute and think about what those purposes might be. Some have been in the building in the past, some they could come back or maybe not. That requires money, lots of it. So then the second column says, y'all conclude that it can't be saved, that demolition is the only possibility. And my question for you then is, what then? Does something else take its place? Does the grounds become just a larger passive park? Or what is that? Third is to sell it or transfer it, maybe sell it for $1 if that's, or sell it and offer the buyer a check for taking it, but with the promise of its restoration, but for private purposes, and that could be lots of different things. Like the examples of old firehouses turned into restaurants are interesting because those big arched windows, which were perfectly sized for wheeling fire wagons that horses dragged in and out of an old firehouse, but not sized for modern fire trucks, right? So they had to find a new use for those beautiful old historic structures, and in those couple of cases, they turned into restaurants. But there are lots of different, they could be housing, it could be something else. Then the last column is kind of a combo where there's some kind of public-private partnership, a for-profit or nonprofit private entity partnering with the public, like the city owners of the property, in some form. And what that is unclear. But those are 4 scenarios we thought of. You probably can think of some more scenarios. Let's go around. Who wants to go next? And since we're recording, tell them your name. I'm going to break the Oprah Winfrey rule and let you hold the mic. We're never supposed to let go of the microphone, but I just...
Okay, I'm Chris Vaughn, and I am a Fairburn resident. I've been here since 2018. And one of the things that I love about Fairburn is that it is enough of the historic and enough of the modern. And I believe that both those things should be preserved, can be preserved. I'm looking at the courthouse as an opportunity to set the tone for what community is, what future interactions will look like in Fairburn, because one of our challenges is in fact growth. And the reason why people live here, yeah, it's a slower pace of life, people are friendly, neighbors still wave to one another, but the people who are incoming from Atlanta, yeah, you think? Really? But one of the challenges from people that are coming into the area from Atlanta and other areas is that they whisk by not knowing the value that is here. And so if this can be multi-use, I see this also, just the building itself, as not an either or, but a multi-use, multi-purposes with utilization inside and outside, but preserving the historic alongside of the modern, yes. So I do have other things to say. I'm not going to be here tomorrow. Tomorrow's my birthday. My husband told me absolutely not. So, but I'll fill those in as we go.
Chris, you said something, a lot of things that were valuable there, but one of them really stuck with me. Set the tone. Our public spaces and our buildings and our streets, they send messages. They aren't just like boxes to keep the rain off when you're inside them or places to drive your car. They send messages like what's your community about? Harrison, you want to go next? You have to give it back eventually to keep it.
Well, I like to talk sometimes, but y'all know I live diagonal across from the courthouse. One reason I bought that house, my house in '80, was because of the courthouse. It drew me to this area. And I wasn't there a week until they drugged me over to the old Campbell County Historical Society. I wore a pair of shorts over there, and I found out right quick that wasn't what you wear to a historical society. But anyway, we want to save the building if possible. It doesn't really matter to me what purpose we put in there. The structure itself is solid. It's brick. I've restored burnt buildings myself, and I know it can be saved. It's a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of money. I don't know what funds the city has for the construction of the building. I understood a while back that there was some insurance money available. I don't know if that was used for what has already been done, or if there's any of that left. But the biggest thing with all of this is financing. I'm a financial man. I know money. And believe me, I could give you one, but my wife wouldn't be happy with it.
That's my inheritance.
That's his inheritance. But I thought many times in the past about buying the place myself, but the maintenance and upkeep kills you. You can't afford it. But I'd love to see the city retain possession of it if possible. If we have to get somebody else to come in and put a lot of money in it, I wouldn't mind seeing a nice restaurant there. I know the parking is not very adequate, but we need some nice restaurants in Fairburn. And a dance parlor would be all right too. I don't care. But let's save the building, whatever it takes. Maybe we can get some grants. It's not a good time to be getting grants, but it wouldn't hurt to check and try to find some. So y'all come visit me. Anybody wants to come visit, let me know.
So Jason Jones, I look at the courthouse every day. I was there the day of the 2 fires, by the way, so it was 2 fires. Same day, the restart. My neighbor alerted him on the second restart because I was like, I think it's restarted. We were moving hoses in the middle of the night. I mean, it was a community effort. One fire hydrant didn't work. We had to move into another, moving cars. Met with the Georgia Trust 2 days later. right? And they had the exact same comments. We'll put it on a list. We have no money. We hope it doesn't get torn down, right? I really think, to echo your point, we would love to see it saved. But that takes money, right? It wasn't, you said restore for public purpose. We've been there for over 10 years, I think even 10 years before that. There wasn't, I would say, it wasn't a working courthouse. It wasn't publicly used. The Historical Society used it, which was great. But it was just still an empty courthouse, and that was it. So we just want to see what are the types of options. Don't want to see it torn down, but at some point in time, me personally, I get sick of looking at urban blight, which is what it is right now, right? It may be historical, but boarded up windows, ropes, I pick up the trash, I blow the leaves, I'm the one that cleans the stairs, I'm the one that moves all the acorns, right? And so for me, it's got to be like, how do we make it at least externally nice while we figure out the inside sort of part, right? That's for me, like, you can actually, I think you can do both, because I just don't think that, you know, restaurants, boutique, which are all wonderful things. I mean, I'd love to have a spaceship built. I mean, whatever, right? Let's create fantasy world, but I know enough restaurant owners that, you know, they need to operate at 70% gross margin, and that's not a...
The main road isn't filled with restaurants. So if we can't get people to put a restaurant on the main road, how are we going to get them to put it in a neighborhood? So to get someone to put a store or any type of retail or restaurant is just building a rocket ship. Like, it's not going to happen. They're not putting it on the main street. So if it could look nice and be beautiful. I'm Angela Jones. I look at it every day as well. And I would love for it to look more like what Fayette County's looks like. It's beautiful on the outside. When we first moved in, we were told that there had been a grant to have landscaping put all around the building. There is no landscaping, as we all saw. So it's just, even since we moved in there, the Historical Society had it. Once the Historical Society gave it over to the city, like, it's just an eyesore, honestly. It's, as beautiful as it is, it has turned into really, the way the fire started, people that sit on the steps and all of all the things that go along with that. It's a hangout for some nefarious people. So something needs to be done to make it either look really nice on the outside, or I don't want to wait for some grant that would be millions and millions of dollars to make it this magical place with no parking that we can't get a restaurant in or a shop in. Like, I don't know why we would spend that kind of money to redo the inside when we don't have someone to actually use it. So I do the outside and wait for the inside. I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you already included in your mind that demolition is the ultimate path?
No, no. I mean, we bought the house.
I personally would not like to see that. I think it is a beautiful building. I love historical sites. But again, if no one ever went to the Smithsonian, tear it down, right? The only reason historical sites are relevant, right, is if people are there. And when we first moved there, some people would take like prom photos. For those of you that have been around a while, like the outlets that are there long ago, the festival was there, right? There was some neat things, but that's long ago, right? And so, again, I would love for it to not be torn down, but I also would not want to wait 10 years and hope and pray that Elon Musk comes and gives us this magical grant to create this wonderful facility, right? Hancock County, so we have very familiar with that one, right? That's still a working courthouse, right? Different scenario, if that was a working courthouse, my assumption would be that courthouse would already be in the process of being restored because it was city-used, owned building, so.
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah. I wanted to go back to something that, Angela, you said, which I think we can all kind of turn our wheels about, is start with the outside. And so on our tour, we talked a lot about the market that used to be there. And so what other things kind of could we envision being there to start with the outside before kind of working our way inside?
To start with the outdoor space.
Yes, yes.
Cut the grass? I mean, and by the way, I want to, I'm vice chairman, I guess now I may be chairman because the vice chairman left, of planning and zoning here as well in the city. But like very
You'll have to
simply,
prove your courage to us and any other.
that's right. Yeah, I know. That's fun. But like the city has actually pick up all the bets and all the stuff that's. So I think the city is actually with downtown Fayetteville. Go there. Their courthouse painted. They're closed. The outside is painted. I don't even know what the inside looks like. It's power washed. The inside could be gutted just like ours, but it's very pretty to drive by. But nobody goes there, right? You know, nobody ever says, "Oh, what are you doing tonight?" "I'm going to the Fayetteville County Courthouse." Now they may have a little concert. I'd love something like that, right? A little band, I mean, here and there. As residents, I do not want a dance parlor, although I do like to dance. That'd be kind of nice, right? But, you know, for us that live, it is an interesting inn because it is a neighborhood, not a historical district. It's part of our historical district, but our historical district is really the main street here. So I just think something, and you could even see over time, I love the history of it. I'm pretty sure that's, and maybe some of the folks here know, not the original paint color. And then you can even see like the beautiful brick stone wall that at some point was kind of falling. And so whoever time said, well, just slap some concrete on the top of it. Don't actually fix it, right? So my big thing is like, if you're going to do it right. And then start from the outside in.
I wanted to get clarification on what exactly you were asking. Are you asking for beautification ideas, like what
I think-
gentleman mentioned? Because if you're talking about anything else, form and function kind of go hand in hand, and what you do on the inside will inform what the outside looks like. So are we talking about beautification or something else?
I think we're talking about both. And so just thinking back to just what sparked my mind was finding out that there were markets there. We saw the outlets there for vendors and food trucks. And so that kind of thing, program for the outside and function that will eventually kind of inform the inside. And then also landscaping. I think cleaning is, I mean, cutting the grass is like, it seems so basic, but I mean, it's, if that's something important, then we put it to the top of the list. And I think that when you have events and a program on the outside, it will kind of push that idea of landscaping. How do we beautify this for this outdoor space?
Let's keep the microphone passing.
Hey, I'm Cheryl Johnson. I'm going to start with a couple of things I don't want in order to speak to what I do want. I live near the courthouse, you know, a block or so away, and I moved in on New Year's Eve 2020, so I'm a newbie. But I don't want more traffic on my street. People are already speeding, and there's a couple kids that it's just not safe. More traffic, more car traffic specifically. I would love, however, for there to be more foot traffic, whether it's sidewalks, or, well, one of the reasons I chose to move to Fairburn was because I came from an environment that was very economically and racially, ethnically diverse. I liked that Fairburn, uniquely for South Atlanta suburbs, I couldn't afford to live in the city, but I liked that I could walk to the grocery stores. I liked that there were black folks and white folks and Latinos. Just by talking to neighbors, to people, I want the Latinx community to feel more welcome and a part of things. And community spaces are often utilized by the Latinx community. And I would like, I'm a person of faith, but I would like there to be a non-faith-based community space that folks can use. I'm not a fan of privatization, and I'm not a fan of demolishing, but the other two options would be attractive to me. I want it to be a safe space. I don't want it to be a place where drugs and sex working is happening at the top of the stairs. I'll just spit, not mincing words. You can walk past. I walk my dog. Yeah. And so, like, I definitely don't want that, but I do want kids to feel safe to linger there, teenagers, people just walking to the stores, to the restaurants, to be able to feel like that is a space they can sit and chat and be social. The train, to me, does create a dividing line in the community. Add on to that, even more so than the train, but Roosevelt Highway. So I appreciate and I recognize so much that Fairburn as a city has done, even before I moved in, to make that a more walkable space, to have the benches there to sit. I definitely recognize that and appreciate that. Most recently, the stairs that go under the train tracks, further up halfway, like by Landmark School, there's more parking that has been developed there, which is really close to the courthouse. And so there are solutions for the traffic issue, which doesn't necessarily create, or parking doesn't deal with the traffic thing. But yeah, I want a space that everybody in the community, regardless of economics and community, can be welcome. I don't want to be just like College Park or South Fulton or Fayetteville or other places. Fairburn has a unique history and a culture to it that is uniquely Fairburn, and I don't want to just be just like every other south of Atlanta suburb / urban suburban space. I didn't move here to live in the suburbs.
As we keep going around, if others of you think about what is uniquely Fairburn. She just laid out a really great challenge. What kinds of things would be uniquely Fairburn? And you could be the best of your kind at in the region, rather than just being another one of something everybody else already has. That's a great challenge. When we maybe keep the microphone passing, did you get close to the end?
Oh, absolutely. I had a whole list, but just trees. The woods in Fairburn are uniquely Fairburn. You don't find the woods in other in Union City or in some of the other towns that are still, used spaces. You can find farm country, but not in spaces where people are regularly.
I think just to add in before we have our next person go is that you mentioned a lot of things that happen in the dark. And so we find that we saw a light at the courthouse that shined on the side of the building, but I think one of the things that will prevent some of those things that you were mentioning from happening is kind of figuring a way to light that space. When it may be benches, it may just be a light pole, it may be anything of that sort. And so just think about that as you're going around and giving kind of your vision.
You nodded a couple of times and you smiled at me encouragingly a few minutes ago. What's your name? What's your name? So that one's on, I think. Can you share with us some of your ideas, your vision for the place?
Sure. My name is Shantisa Fulgham, and I have lived here for 20 years. I bought my house when my daughter was 1, and she's 21. So I remember the first time I was driving on my way to see the house. We came down Valley Brook, and the trees caught my attention. And that's what I fell in love with. So by the time I reached my street, I knew it was home for me. I would like to see the building restored. I do not think it should be demolished. I think it is a beautiful building, and I hope we can find some kind of multi-purpose. I think the stairs are amazing. I see weddings, I see people gathering, and I would love to see the stairs and the building restored.
Partitioned off into smaller spaces. There's this big brick cube right in the middle. I guess that may have been a holding cell or something.
We had a meeting room in the middle, kitchen and bathrooms at
And 4 fireplaces on each level. Right.
Each room had its own fireplace.
And then upstairs was one big room with a dais. So obviously that was the courtroom, right? And it's, for those who haven't been up there, it's a big rectangular open room, column-free interior with a high ceiling. So it isn't immediately obvious when you stand at the front door like we did during the tour and just peer in and you see all those partitions. It's not immediately obvious what kind of space is just
You know, the upstairs was the courtroom. At the back, as you went in the front door, there was a platform with a little crawl-through hole. You can see a gentleman up there with a shotgun when they was having court. And that's where the guards sit, up above everybody with a scatter gun. And anyway, it had a stage at the back, but that stage was added back when they, somewhere in the teens or 20s, they built a stage up and had performances on the stage. But originally it was just one flat level with the judge in the back and juries on the side and the benches for the spectators out front. They had court there for many, many, many years, and till things changed. And but it was a very nice building. The county restored the downstairs. Historical Society got a grant. Fulton County restored the downstairs, put in the new bathrooms, the kitchen, had it fairly nice, but they didn't touch the upstairs. The upstairs was just like it was back in the 30s and 40s. Had old asbestos ceiling, had maple flooring put over the original heart pine flooring upstairs, but it could have been restored. I got up some prices to have the upstairs restored for around $100,000. We was going to put in, redo the ceiling and put in some more heating and air up there, but it never did come to prevail. So it's a very, very good, sturdy building, but it's got a lot of work to be done to it.
Yeah, I see you with the microphone. What's your name?
Honey Williams.
Nice to meet you.
With an I. I've been in Fairburn, I think, about 20 years now. I'm a retired. I'm 77. I don't know if that's old or not. But back to what I want to say. Because I'm from education, scenario 1, restore for public purposes. We have a lot. We have everything here in walking distance. It's just great. But I'd like to see that restored and something where children can come through for whatever reason. We have a dance studio, we have a library, but maybe arts and crafts, just something so that kids can come and spend some time in it, even if they're just hearing the history, like we're hearing the history now. When I first moved here, I think I remembered when the lights were outside and when you passed by at night and the lights were shining on, that was beautiful. I don't remember the stage it was in. I don't think it's like it is now, but that was quite a beauty at night to see. And since I've been here, they did move the Fairburn Fall Festival back to the ground, but it wasn't enough room, so they had to carry it back downtown. A lot could be done. I also think I like public dropping private. Well, you have to, they couldn't be drop partnership. But we would still, I need to know, would we still have some control with that scenario? I need an answer for that.
There's in the town where our office is located in South Florida, we have the biggest and most important historic building in the town was built as a hotel. And it was gradually, after decades of neglect and abuse, it came to be owned by the city. But they, in turn, leased it to a hotel operator who put in the investment capital to restore it and then leased it for 99 years. So the city still owns the asset, They have a private business that operates, now it started as a hotel, and it's still a hotel, so that's a different scenario. But you can imagine, it's not like a light switch where it's on or off, 1 or 0, yes or no. There are combinations of this. The city could remain an owner, but partner with another entity that takes on the responsibility of operations and maintenance. And maybe they share the costs, or they and the state, philanthropy, or what have you, share the costs of the restoration to get it up and running. Those are variations on the business plan. And that's kind of what was running through my head as we were talking about the economics of it, and Councilmember clearly pointed out earlier, the money question is always the question. And I've heard each of y'all say that in different ways. We need a business plan that goes with the physical thing, not just, because we already know where the columns go. We know where the stair belongs. We have an idea where the front and the back is, and that kind of thing. What we need is the business plan. So in this case, it's kind of the software, not the hardware. Hardware's been damaged, so if it's to be repurposed and revved back up and put to work again, it has to be restored. The business plan is the key missing piece. Anyone?
Definitely don't want to see it demolished.
Hey there, my name's Allison Duncan. I do not live in Fairburn. I live in the city of Chattahoochee Hills. I work in land planning in Douglas County.
Visa?
I'm sorry. I do not have a visa because Fairburn is a very welcoming community, right? They do not need me to bring a visa. Fairburn is an amazing community. And I have had the privilege over the years of working on projects in Fairburn in my capacity as a land planner. But share all this to say that when you say you've heard everybody here talk about a business plan, you'll need to qualify that to be everybody here but one, because that's not the conversation I want to have with you. I think that it's an important conversation to have. But I have the privilege of being a member of the old Campbell County Historical Society. And as a veteran of 20-odd years in government, the idea of a county going away, right, ceasing to exist, is nothing short of amazing. So that's my specific research interest when I'm at Old Campbell County Historical Society, is just understanding what happened, leading up to that, particularly because I have the privilege of living and working in so many parts of what was Campbell County. I very confidently would say to you at whatever point that yes, I think funds are available. I think there are programs available. I think there are resources available. For as much as I would love to say you should really just take demolition off the table as an option, I am satisfied by saying just know that there is one person who is not going to talk to you strictly about the business plan and the marketability, because I think that there is no doubt in my mind that that can come to fruition. But I want to make sure that I also speak to what is to some degree not replicable, right? Whether you put a new use into it, whether it's because it's a government use, but this idea that is a tangible reminder of this thing that is so unique that has just gone away, that ceases to exist, right? That I think is also part of the substance of what is authentically Fairburn and what is authentically this area. That if this goes away, you can never, ever recreate it. You could never get it back. And that is the thing that has captured my imagination as a part of being here. And so I want to just kind of put an idea out there that there is more than just the business plan. There's more than just the bricks and mortar. There's more than just what adaptive reuse could happen. But there is this thing that you can never, ever, ever get back if it goes away. And I think that's part of what I would hope to see y'all capture as the consultants.
I do feel the pressure of what feels like it could come before your council as a forever decision. And
Well said.
It's a hard thing we place upon the shoulders of our elected officials to make what will be forever decisions. And they do it all the time in land planning with zoning and annexations and things like that. But historic preservation is full of these forever decisions, because when it's gone, it's gone. And now I want to just thank you for everything you just said. It was good, and it reminded me that in so many cases, at the beginning stages of plans, there's not yet an idea of how, whatever it is, how we would pay for that. How would you pay for that is always or the second question is, well, what about the parking? But we can get to that in a minute. But first question always is, well, how would you pay for that? And really what in reality happens is the really best ideas tend to move to the front of the line for funding, whether it's private investment or philanthropy or public investment. Lee, you were in Beaufort County, so you know about one. We did a plan for Boundary Street in historic Beaufort, South Carolina. And it was an ambitious plan at the urging of neighbors who set their sights high, and a mayor who said, if we're a community, why don't we deliberately set out to plan what we consider ideal? And so that's what they did. And the first question was always, well, that looks really great, but how would it pay for that? Is that just a pretty picture? But with the pictures in hand, within a couple of years, they moved right to the front of the line. They went from being a non-project, not on anybody's list, to rebuild Boundary Street, to being first in line for funding, in this case, a combination of federal and state funding. A lot of money from a funding source that didn't even exist at the time that the plan was being done, was hatched in the years that followed. So you do kind of have to decide what you want to be first, and then you figure out how to backfill all the tools. And the first and most important tool is willingness. So your comments are really great. I'm grateful for it.
Well, and by conclusion, and then I will release the microphone, I have a number of consultants and architects and designers and planners that come into my community, and it doesn't matter if we're dealing with something with a lot of support or a really gnarly project or something that you can't get your arms around. The message that I have for them is always generally the same, right? Do something that you would be proud of. Do something that you would show your children and point to and say, hey, I designed that, right? And I want you to be proud of it. And so that's the final thing that I would share with y'all, is that you started our evening tonight with about 15 minutes of like, look at all this amazing stuff our company did, right? And I think that if somehow the recommendation coming out of this is like, we worked with all these citizens who really love their community, and yet we decided to demolish the building, I would say you wouldn't put that in the first 15-minute speech in another community that you go to show how effective and how successful you are at accomplishing it.
When you're talking to your neighbors and not just to me, but that was, I certainly appreciate it. It's absolutely true.
Yeah,
Why
I think
would y'all set out to create something less than what you consider ideal?
one thing that I think is important too is celebrating that kind of culture, because there is a history, like you said, and so keeping the building standing is the greatest way to keep that history. But I do want to hear from you all any other ways and any other ideas, and also if anyone else from the Historical Society wants to kind of add into anything you said, please feel free.
Hey, while she gets the mic, before tonight's over, Michelle McAteer, what's the timeline? How has the city, what's the deliverables the city has given you? When are your deliverables due? Have they shared with you what happens after that? Like, are we talking about something that they're going to vote on in 6 months, 5 years? Have they given you any sense of that?
Yeah, so for us, as far as our deadline, we will be here until Friday. And so we'll take all of these, and I'll go over this again as we kind of adjourn our meeting, but we'll kind of take everything that you have said tonight, kind of brief with each other tonight and tomorrow morning to kind of spend the day to put your ideas into practice. And so that's where that 9 to 5 time slot comes in, to come in and let us know. And please feel free to let us know if we're not on the right track. And then on Friday, we'll have a meeting with the city. Here's what we came to your community. We spoke with your residents. We walked with your residents. We talked with them. Here's what they said. Here's what they want. Here's what we have. And then from there, it's to move that idea to them. And so we haven't talked about next steps in that particular sense, but Friday is kind of the key, as we're kind of the voices for you all, and which is why we're here today, hearing from you first, to kind of take note of what you're saying, what you want, and producing that. And that tomorrow is a great way for you to tell us if we are on the right track before we take that next step, because we would not want to go and not be on the right track with them as they push this forward.
I just wanted to ask all of you to just give some thought to how we might use the facility as a destination, right? We talk about Fairburn's uniqueness, but we need to bring people into town. We need to have people spend money in our town. That's how we be able to afford the various things that we're trying to do. So give some thought to us being a destination and how that facility can become a destination site. why would people want to come? Great to see. If we can get that, we can do the marketing and get all the people here. But we need your ideas about what that might look like. So if you can think about that overnight, come stop by tomorrow and share that with the team, that would be great.
My name is Lila Ryan, and I go way back in this area. My grandparents lived in Fairburn. I'll tell you, I didn't grow up in Fairburn. I grew up 9 miles west out off Rivertown Road, closer to the river. But my grandparents lived in Fairburn, so I was here a lot. And my great-grandfather was actually sheriff of Campbell County. And my mother was one of the founding members of the Old Campbell County Historical Society in 1971. I've been a part of it since I was a year old, so you can figure out my age. And so I just wanted to say something that Lamar said earlier. When it was on fire, he wasn't the only one crying. He said that to us when we were over there, when I saw the news and it happening. I am currently the Secretary-Treasurer of the Old Campbell County Historical Society, been a life member. And as Allison mentioned, just to echo how unique it was that a county did cease to exist. I mentioned to Allison just recently that we lost one courthouse already, the original Campbell County Courthouse. It went into deterioration and ended up being torn down and barns built out of it. So, and what a, thing, that's why I do not want to see this one gone. How I wish we still had the original one as well here in, this area. So I know that wasn't, but we were there as a historical society from 1971 to 2020. And so Fulton County had, as you know, the history had part of it. In '83, they did do some restoration, but that was about it. And then when Fairburn took it over, we just didn't have the funds or the support to keep it going. Thanks to Lamar and his son, they did a lot of the maintenance there for many years. To keep it where it was until we were moved out. But I think it can be used for various reasons, various ways. For a lady, I've attended a wedding there in the past. I've been to, obviously there was Old Campbell County Day ever since 1971, the first Saturday of October, which now is still a festival, still going, which I think is amazing. So I appreciate Fairburn residents to keep that alive. So I think that's something that, and it, I know looking at the options of what you could use it for, but like the councilwoman said about, think of it how we can bring a destination here, because on we had a small museum there, and we were a historical society. We did have a miniature, it was almost miniature in the first floor. We did not occupy the second floor. We weren't allowed to allow anyone to even go to the second floor because of insurance reasons. And it wasn't ADA compatible, as you know. And so I know that's where a lot of expense will come into as well. But I think that, I agree with the folks, fix it up outside, put some benches, let it be, a place first, get it looking nice. And then maybe if it is a destination point, I mean, I know you have the event, you could restore it for an event center as well, too. That might be something, that's people, I think I'm just echoing a lot of what's already been said tonight as well. But, and this is one thing, I don't want to scare the residents, but I get a lot of requests, but my family won't do it. The film industry is very, much a part of our area and the economy. And my mom's home place, original farm, we get a lot of requests. They want to film at the old farmhouse, and it's just not in the shape to. And I'm not saying that's what we do, but I don't know. Fairburn may have been
in a couple of films.
Has it? Okay. Okay. So yeah. So that's something going forward to look at as well. But there are a few of us here that are members of the Old Campbell County Historical Society. So I think most of us are probably all in agreement with what Allison has said and going forward. And I don't know if we have another member, Miss Jackie Langford. I don't know if she'd like to make a few comments.
I'm actually from Palmetto, but I've been in the area all my life. And I would just hate to see it torn down. I think of an event center of some sort, weddings, things like that, they could make some money. The train depot in Palmetto, they have an event center, And it's every weekend almost that they, you know, they rent it out. And so it helps with the expenses.
I told you I was a professional provocateur, so I'm just going to be a troublemaker and push y'all a little bit here. Every town we go to, especially if there's a special site or a special building that has lost its original purpose and people don't want to see it lost, I will hear, you know, they ought to turn it into blank. They ought to turn it into an art center. They ought to turn it into a place for concerts. They ought to turn it into this or turn it into a headquarters for nonprofits. They ought to turn it into a hotel. Doesn't matter what the thing is. There's always that they in that sentence, and I'm gonna push y'all just a little bit to think who the they is. Who is the they? It might be y'all. I mean, it could. The they could be us, not me, but y'all. But I do think the councilwoman's challenge to think about what could be an attraction that would be a destination that would cause it to have the chance to be enjoyed by more people for a long time. And the more cherished it is, the better chance it has of surviving not just this latest mishap and fire, but the next thing that befalls it and the one after that. I would add the challenge of who's they? Do you all have an idea already of what organizations or individuals or businesses or any of the government's agencies, doesn't matter, any of the above, are the right operators for that space? And if so, share that with us. You know, we don't know about them until you bring them up.
Hi. Me again. So, Allison Duncan. Good point about they. I do believe that you could take they and you could substitute we, and I think that you would have a good sense for what this community is saying. In terms of being a destination, the we being the Old Campbell County Historical Society members, the we being the Chattahoochee Hills Historical Commission members, have been looking at other communities and what they have done with their city-owned historic buildings. So there have been conversations had about a heritage area, and to the extent that I think you look to our friends in DeKalb and Rockdale County, how they have been able to establish a heritage area that would truly be a we. It would be Fairburn, it would be Fulton County, it would be Douglas County, it would be Chattahoochee Hills, and a number of other jurisdictions. They've had some success in doing that. And so that does create the destination, as we have spoken about. It also does come with a certain amount of dedicated federal funding to help with programming. So I think that's one area that I would put out there as the we. But I would also say that over the course of the last year, the we, that is the Chattahoochee Hills Historical Commission, has been visiting various sites in Marietta, in Roswell, looking at the Roswell Trilogy, looking at what downtown Marietta has done in terms of a destination and placemaking. We went out to the heritage area and we looked at how they have incorporated all of their development there. So I would say that we could certainly give a list of other communities and how they have effectively used their heritage resources to create the tourism function, the destination function, and things like that. And there's absolutely no reason why Fairburn could not be just as successful as some of our other partner communities in doing that in a variety of ways.
I have a question. Any experience with, I'm supposed to, any experience with, I mean, we are a railroad town, right? What role does that play in this conversation? And have you had any experiences with, railroads in other towns? Any ideas about how we could incorporate CSX here or, the railway?
We'll say that there are a limited number, but not none. There's a small number of places around the country where freight lines have become shared with other kinds of activities like tourism trains, dinner trains or tourist trains and things. But there are very few of these, and most of them pass through really remarkable scenery or deep concentrations of lots of historical buildings. So actually getting people onto the CSX tracks until such time as they bring passenger traffic back to that line, which fully predict will someday happen, but that may not be in the immediate offering. On the other hand, There are also lots of examples, especially in Canada, interestingly, for rail and trail combinations. CSX is openly hostile to this idea, so don't forget I told you that. But there are places where they've combined freight corridors and trails, not even necessarily in the same right-of-way. Some communities which have a collection of places that are relatively close to one another end up designating a heritage trail or a list of destinations along that for people who are making pilgrimages to discover their own histories. You know, the happy parts of our histories and the unhappy parts of our histories can be showcased in those places. There are lots of examples of rails to trails programs. I would tell you that's an astonishing number of those when they abandon a line, but right now you have an active line. And so you're not really that. You're not really that, right? So if we were in Northwest Arkansas, you know, I could tell you about a 46-mile trail that links 5 towns that was not all that long ago, a freight corridor that had very little use. You're not that. So I do think it would be worth thinking about the pattern on the land that your regional agencies and the local governments have been working on together to figure out a system of a network of non-motorized paths that interconnect with one another. The most famous example in the nation is the Beltline. So y'all have that locally to know what it can change, you know, in a place. Mostly good changes, not all good changes, but mostly good changes. So it's worth zooming out a little bit. We start with this little rectangle on a map for the courthouse from the old fire insurance map and realize it's hitched to everything else in the region. If you start thinking of it as a set, it might become more obvious how it can be connected. You know, your tree canopy, which came up a few times, is a rarity. That's why you notice it when you come into the town. Building off of that strength, making, you know, a goal to become one of the most attractive places for walking and biking and transit, for example, would be leveraging your strength in that the shady walks that can be had here. There's one last thing about leveraging your assets. It didn't come up when we were on the tour, but I couldn't help notice when we were standing on that the terrace of land that sits up above the street behind the courthouse. It's on the flat part. It's literally the top of the hill where it drops off in one direction toward Landmark, another direction toward the tracks, and behind the courthouse drops down the hill in the other direction. So it is already sitting on the hilltop as the special site. It's why they chose that for the courthouse in the first place. So something that takes advantage of that special hilltop site in an urban forest would seem like a logical thing to do. So, you know, I can't help but notice the people who put that courthouse there picked the most prominent site they could come up with, where when folks were going back and forth on the train, before it was moved to its current alignment, when it was out in the road, would be most aware of it. They situated it on that hilltop so you'd look up at it and it would send a message about the importance of the institution inside of it. And that, even though the institution is gone, that message is still being sent. It's a powerful thing. It's like a brand or logo. Y'all know the Oz Pizza place downtown, right? The mural on the side of the building that has a beautiful hand-painted drawing of the courthouse. Why would they pick that to put on because it's symbolically powerful. So I hope we can find a way to come up with an attraction use that would use that. And the train, you know, in the fullness of time, will be more of an asset than it is. Right now, you just have that nice sound of the romance of the rails, of poetry that the steel wheels are making on the tracks, and that's a good thing too. I hope y'all realize that we, in just visiting with it today and visiting y'all, have a lot of respect for it. So we're not, our own approach will be like the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. That's where I'm coming from. Sir?
My name's Dee Claiborne. I grew up in the area, East Point, College Park, Fairburn. Graduated from Campbell of Fairburn back in '86. So I've been around for a long time. I used to cut keys at Shannon Mall. But one thing that I've been involved with in East Point over the years is the East Point Preservation Alliance. And we helped save a whole city block from being torn down. And it was their original city hall, their city auditorium that was built during the FDR days, and their library. And all these have been used in multiple films and TV series, Walking Dead. And they're restoring the auditorium to be used as a venue, like concerts and stuff like that. So it's taken a long time, but it was well worth the effort. And one thing we learned that through all that was that, you know, that because there was many discussions about tearing down and what can we do and where's the money going to come from and all that stuff. And we learned that the greenest building is the one that's already built. And it costs a lot more to tear down. And where does all that stuff go? Well, it goes to the landfill. And nobody wants to do that anymore. So I think there are a lot. I'm all for saving it. I think it's a valuable resource for whatever we use it for. It's one of the oldest civic buildings in the state. It's the only thing in Fairburn I know that has its own Christmas ornament. You know, so I mean, I think it's.
Where did you get this from?
I got it from the old Campbell County Historical Society a few years ago.
They have merchandise.
You know, so I think it's well worth preserving and using on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
That's amazing. Well, that is an amazing piece. That is a great.
Question for you as we wrap up is like, how do we align lofty expectations with reality, right? And you're pointing on destination, right? Fairburn is a wonderful, diverse, welcoming bedroom community for the city of Atlanta that is the destination, right? I don't see anybody from Oklahoma City flying to come to see Campbell County Courthouse, right? They're going to come to Atlanta. They may come here and explore, like many of, I just had 30 business colleagues that are exploring all around the area. So just like to hear from you, right? Because when I was on Downtown Development Authority, people were like, well, why don't they build a Trader Joe's here? Why don't they give us a Whole Foods? And it's back to the they, because the they can't make any money. That's why the Trader Joe's is in Peachtree City right now, or the Whole Foods is in another place. So I just love to hear from you. How do you, when you're working with communities, that we all have these amazing ideas, the art of the possible, but how do you balance that with the reality, right? We have a courthouse on a small piece of land in a residential area, and thanks to all the residents around there who've, myself included, we've really renovated that area. If anybody remembers my house, before we got it, and your old houses as well. But how do you balance that, right, in terms of lofty goals and magic and rainbows to this is who we are, and this is what we can use it for, and this is the money that we could maybe get access to. Otherwise, I just feel like we get caught in dreaming, and we're back here in 10 years, right, with the same thing.
Oh, no, with a much worse problem, because the rain is coming in.
Yeah, exactly.
I was saying, you don't just come back in 10 years with the same problem, because you come back in 10 years with a much worse problem, because the rain is intruding in the building and demolition is occurring, however slowly. And the city has done some things to try and stabilize it and keep it safe, and change the locks to keep people out that don't belong inside. But in the second floor, you can see the sky in far too many places for me to expect that in 10 years you would have the same problem. You would have a much more difficult and expensive problem at that point. Now, do you want to answer anything about the question of reconciling to reality before I give my answer? Mine's going to be short.
Mine will be too. Yeah, I can go ahead before.
You have an answer for that, Chris?
Indirect.
Why we had your chairs face each other? So y'all can see.
Indirectly. I moved here from St. Louis in 2018. And one of the first things I did when I got into this community was I walked downtown and I stopped and I spoke to different shop owners. One of the things that struck me was the cynicism. I literally spoke to shop owners that said there was nothing going on here in Fairburn. Even a couple of years later, and lo and behold, they're not there anymore, but whatever you set your focus to is what grows. Even when the changes started happening and became more vibrant, because they had set their mind, they couldn't even see the progress. They couldn't see the growth, and because of their mindset, they didn't experience the growth and are no longer there. So some of the comments that I've heard, and I'm sure you guys are aware because you've been here far longer than I have, are actually, they are more nuanced than what we're saying. The reason why Whole Foods is not in our community is not because we don't have the economic base to support it. It's because Whole Foods we meet all the criteria to have a Whole Foods, except for the percentage of people who hold MBAs. Okay? So it's things like that that can get glossed over. I see meetings like this as a way for us to come together and actually paint the picture that we want, instead of the one that we currently have. And we have the ability to construct things that I think whatever the solution is, it should be scalable. In other words, not an either or, not, oh, it should be a museum, which then the onus is on us to generate the revenue to keep it open because, you fall over into fundraising. It should not just be, a dance studio, whatnot. We need something definitely that is economic, that generates revenue, but it can also do that. Now, whether that's 10 stores and 10 parking lots, and by stores I'm talking about, the building, and it's something like Heirloom Market that was in Peachtree City that burned down 2 years ago, where they had spaces sectioned off and each one was a different vendor. And huge economic base for the individual entrepreneurs that were there housing their goods. Or whether it is something like, not to go to, Fayette, but just as an example, 240 Glen Street. There's only 10 shops there. They are earning millions of dollars in revenue first year in business, and it continues to grow. It's not a burden to the community because they are within a residential neighborhood. Parking is limited. So whether it's this courthouse becomes something that houses 30 businesses or 10, let it be a solution that's scalable, that is going to generate revenue, that remains walkable rather, so that it's not a stress on the community and the residents surrounding them that have done so much already to keep that place, nice, to make it not be, an eyesore, in spite of the several boards that it has, to reward them, like, thank you for putting up with it. Yes, you were homeowners. Yes, you didn't have to do that, but look at it now. So let it be an option that's scalable, not one that we can come to the table and just vote yay or no, but something that will serve the purpose not only now but in the future. So be aware that some of the comments, they are more nuanced conversation, but we don't need to do that. What we are here to do is to paint the picture that we eventually want to see. The money will come.
So, is that your answer for Jason's question also?
That was just, no,
Okay.
that was just a comment.
I did hear, that was useful.
just a comment.
I want to give you a couple of thoughts. The first is, with any enterprise, and it could be a park, or it could be a building, or it could be a company, or it could be a hotel, it doesn't matter. It's going to have expenses, and then it's going to have income, revenue perhaps, or other sources that have to be sufficient to offset those expenses. And earlier tonight, it was pointed out that you don't just have to plan for the costs of restoring a historic building, you have to plan for its operations and maintenance. And so these days, because public funds are always scarce and there's a fight over every budget, it will often be the case that anything that seems at all optional to a community will be something that has to have its own revenue stream in order to support its operations and maintenance. Now, an economic argument can be made for the value of symbols and historic architecture. If it's your brand, because it's on the side of your mural and it's on your Christmas ornament, then you don't just casually toss it aside. That would be like imagining New York City promoting itself without the silhouette of the Empire State Building on all those postcards. So there's an inherent economic value to powerful symbols, as long as you're proud of them and you feel there's consensus about those symbols. I've worked in plenty of communities where a perfectly beautiful and exquisitely proportioned American democratic version of Greek temple was viewed by some of the citizens as a symbol of the bad old days from the oppressive times in which it was built. And a community that feels that way about it isn't going to put it as a high priority and isn't going to think of it as part of their brand. And part of our probe here is to see, we've learned this self-selected group of people who came tonight gave us a pretty clear indication that you think it is important. And so I see that. Now, so that has an economic value. That is one of those inputs. There's a basic tool, if you're measuring inputs and outputs, revenue and expenses, to a pro forma, a chart, which says, here's where the money comes in, here's when it comes in, here's how it is spent, and here's how the revenue exceeds the expenses, and it's sustainable over time. And if we can't do that, then unless there is a philanthropic support or a sentimental support that is strong enough to support paying for it, even though it isn't self-generating an income, then we don't have a solution. So although I think first, even if we had the perfect chart and the perfect plan and the perfect partner, let's say, for profit, nonprofit, combinations thereof, if there's not willingness, nothing will work. So willingness is the first and most important ingredient in the inputs and outputs. And so we're probing to see if the willingness is really there. Because if it's not, I always say you can't push a rope. You all know, heard that phrase? You can't push a rope. If that willingness is not there, the community feels strongly about a bunch of things, but this is not one of them, then the community is not going to be the source of the funds to restore it or maintain it. And I think, I hope I'm not sounding too tough on y'all about this, but generally when there are successful campaigns to restore and reuse historic buildings, it's because a bunch of noisy and passionate people go sell that story to a lot of other people, and they build consensus around the idea, and they fight for it, and they speak up for it, until the willingness gels. We've lost, you probably know that in America, the modern historic preservation movement had a real tipping point when Pennsylvania Station in Manhattan was demolished, despite all the ardent cries from preservationists not to destroy the most beautiful train station in the world. And they did it anyway. That was the time they were in. A lot of things got demolished mainly out of spite. And there's a deep regret now in the whole country about that loss, but it catalyzed the historic preservation movement, which was already, decades old in our country, but small, and mainly in Savannah and New Orleans and Charleston. It catalyzed historic preservation to become a huge priority. And so in the 15 years after that, before the bicentennial, it became a national priority. It became part of the national law. We got a Preservation Act. We have historic preservation tax credits built into the financial system, things that didn't exist before that tipping point. My question for you is, are you all only going to get motivated to take the next step on historic preservation after the symbol on your Christmas ornaments is lost? That would be like deciding to have high standards after low standards have eliminated everything you loved. So don't do that. But it certainly won't, we can do things like the math in that chart, and we can draw the picture that you can use to walk around and show people and say, do you think we could do this? But the campaign, the selling of that story to yourselves and to the wider circle of supporters and friends, and then ultimately to your elected leaders, falls to y'all. So I hope that wasn't too grandiose a speech, but I think that's my answer to your question. You got to make a chart.
And if I can build upon that before we kind of close here, you mentioned all of this does probably seem, and we have been in a lot of communities where we come in and all these ideas are thrown out, and it does seem like roses and butterflies. But I think willingness, like you said, is the realistic part of it, right? As you go before, it doesn't just stop here, or it doesn't just stop on Friday. It continues to be pushed forward, and that is through you all, because we'll have this idea that hopefully you all approve of, but we'll go home. You all will stay here, and you will have that chance to push that forward. So I think there's a couple of realistics, right? The willingness, and you all being here is showing that effort, number one. But also, the realistic is the place, right? It's already made its own destination, and we're figuring out how to enhance that, and we've been discussing many ideas like we've talked about. But I think we talked about the composition of the building, where it sits. It's already framed itself, right? So how can we build upon that? And so that's another realistic, right? You mentioned the kind of the divide of the train, and we talked a little bit about the ways that we can kind of incorporate that. And I think that's the whole idea, right? The real is also its proximity to all these things. And you talked about the road as well, which is, I feel like, a whole nother project that we could probably tackle. But it is the realist that it is close proximity to all of these great things. And so moving this forward and thinking about the identity moving forward to bring people, like you were saying, that are not just coming from Atlanta and just passing by and like, oh, that's a nice town, but what's the staple that kind of sets this here? And so I think that's what we'll be trying to figure out tomorrow as we go through. And so just to close out here, I'll show the next steps that'll come up here on the screen behind me. And so today was the first step of, should be coming up now. It should come up soon, but this was the first step to a process of the next 3 days. And so tomorrow, like I mentioned, we'll be here early, bright and early, putting together our heads to kind of consolidate all of this information that we've had, and then start to build on a sort of idea. And so 9 to 5 will be in this room right here for you all to stop by and to kind of let us know, like I said, if we're on the right track. And please let us know if we're on the right track, because like I said, we'll leave the draft here and we'll go home. And so it's important to know if we're in the right direction and what to change before we talk on Friday, which is the 13th, where we'll have the work in progress meeting just to kind of wrap up everything we heard. And like I said, we will kind of be your voices. And so tomorrow is kind of the key to kind of let us know if what we're saying and what we're putting out is good enough for you all to go into that Friday meeting. And so once we leave there, the next steps, we may come back. The next steps are uncertain for right now, but to get to that Friday mark, to have something on the table and to let them know your willingness to be here, right? The realistics of you all wanting this courthouse to stay standing, and your passion for this neighborhood as a whole. And so those will be the next steps. And I think after we adjourn here, you can find more information and give more feedback. We'll have all the documents scanned from the work in progress on Friday, so you'll be able to have access to that at the city's website. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Denise or me, who's back there, and that will adjourn anything. And so if you find the documents have been put up on the website that you want to give more feedback and let us know, then this is not at all what we talked about on Thursday, what is happening, you'll have a chance to do that. But I think that we have a good enough idea of what you all have wanted, and thank you all for being so vocal and so present, and your willingness to be here and your passion for not only just the courthouse and the parcel itself, but this whole city, and wanting to make it kind of a destination place to build off of that. So thank you all so much for coming out, and we hope to see you tomorrow.
Denise, council member.
So I've been drafted to close us out. Well, no, but I'm Councilwoman Hattie Portis-Jones, and I want to say thank you for coming out and participating and sharing your ideas about this project. As has been stated, this is the first step in the process, and we're needing to hear from everyone. Fairburn is a population of over 18,000 people. This number is not representative of that. So we've got a lot more conversations that we need to have, and we need to hear from a lot more people, right? Because Fairburn is the we, not just us in this room, but the entire city. So we're here, but it's on us to get out, get the word out, get people to give us some feedback, because as you were stating, this is a forever decision. And some forever decisions have been some wrong decisions, and we want to try not to make that. But we can only do that if we hear from the people whom we represent. So please, help us, help you, help Fairburn. And so on behalf of Mayor Avery, he didn't ask me to speak, but I'm speaking on behalf of myself as well, Councilwoman Hattie Portis-Jones, because I'm very interested in this project as well, and I want to make sure that we make the right decision. So on behalf of all of us, thank you, thank you, thank you. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Also, feel free, like I mentioned, there's maps all around this room, and so Andrew has been doing a great job kind of putting together our notes here, so feel free to take a look around before you all come back tomorrow, and hopefully we see you all this week.